Charles, I like this title. We've got some paranormal activity happening. We're going to be talking about our favorite jackass today, Norm Eisen. He's such a troublemaker, Charles. How are you?
I'm fine, thanks, Jason. Thanks for having me back on. It's a pleasure to be here in Gili Air, which I think
Huh.
this marks the first time that we have done a broadcast from Gili Air.
We.
There are you and I, there are three islands in the state of Lombok, which is a very big place, itself an island, and these are three islands off of the big island Lombok. Gili Air being the closest, and it's a delightful place. Even though it rained last night,
That's nice.
it is just gorgeous and lovely food.
Gili
Uh,
Air, it's even slimmer than the normal Gili and longer battery life.
yeah, yeah. And this time I haven't. Next time I come back, I'll rent a boat and go on boat trips and stuff like that. But I just use boats to get between the islands.
Huh.
Um, and it's just you walk out of your room and you just, if you're not smiling, you have a problem because it's just so pleasant.
Wow. Yeah,
Now
that's great.
it is 10,000 miles from New York City, so
Mm.
you can't go there for the weekend. But
No. Have you been hanging out with sea turtles? I think I just saw one there.
yeah, yeah. Well, I haven't. Yeah, there are turtles everywhere basically, and geckos. And,
Hmm.
no monkeys.
Oh,
Interestingly,
I
there are
was
a lot of
told there'd be
monkeys.
monkeys. Get the maitre d' over here.
It's really nice. Anyway, on the subject of troublesome lawyers, I remember when I was defending against and launching hostile takeovers for clients. I remember that you couldn't just have a spurious lawsuit. You quickly got in trouble if you tried to slow something down with an obviously bullshit approach. And
What do you mean
in the
trouble? Who
case of
got you
this,
in trouble?
your fellow attorneys, you just got a reputation for being somebody that needed to be disciplined by the bar. Um, and so there were what are called strike suit lawyers who, every time a merger that needed a shareholder vote to close, would launch these suits. And I remember in the case of Western Airlines, there was a particularly dirtbag firm that launched such a suit, and we were trying to close. And it was the first time I was deposed. Actually, was in connection with that lawsuit. And I think the merger value was like 800 million in 1986, which that's a fair amount of money back then and now. Um, and I was particularly close with the chairman, and he said, "Charles, look, we need to close this deal. They're down from a million. All I have to do is pay him 250." And I just turned to him. I said, "Jerry, fuck them. We're not going to pay him a penny." And it was the
Yeah.
first time that they went away because they didn't have a case. And in the case of Norm, one thing that stands out to me is that he appears to be doing a lot of this work. First of all, it's 100% against Trump. So it's pretty tough to argue that this isn't partisan, right? This is a Democrat, close buddy of Obama, law school buddy of Obama, protecting Obama by exclusively launching lawsuits against a conservative Republican. It's on the face of it. If he were doing this in his private capacity and paying himself, getting donors to pay him or clients to pay him to launch 160 lawsuits, I would understand that in a private capacity. But I certainly don't understand it doing it through a public. Is it a public charity that he's doing this through, or is it just a?
Well, so this is what came up in my amicus brief, and kind of what got you and I back to talking about this, is that he's got this dual sort of structure entity where he's got the state democracy. Let me go to ProPublica here, and we'll bring it up specifically.
Sure.
But he's got state democracy here. Norm Eisen. He has a 501c3 and a 501c4. So what he's done is he's got the States United Democracy and Center, which is the C3, and then States United Action, which is the C4. And so he basically is saying, okay, so we can get all of our, fully tax deductible, super duper funds into this public nonprofit that he just created in 2021. And then what we'll do is we'll commingle, I forget what the exact numbers are. We can go to the amicus brief, but it's over $6 million to just, share expenses and send money to this C4 and then do all of our partisan activity through that and pretend like that's somehow okay, which obviously it's not.
Well, let's stick on the C3 for a second. The C3, and we'll go into this in more depth for the paid subscribers because it'll take a while. But is the C3 a 170B1A6?
Yes,
or is
it is?
It is. Okay, so then on the face of it, and we'll tear this apart in depth in the paid section, but on the face of it, this is an obvious scam.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Right? Because this is one person who happens to be very close to Barack Obama. Close enough that Barack Obama, of all people, to decide that he is going to institute, what is it called? The made him the integrity czar or something.
Ethics
czar.
Ridiculous.
Yeah, right. Al Capone, sitting there saying, "I need an ethics czar."
Let's make him P. Diddy. Let's get him to be the ethics czar.
Yeah. So on the face of it, and then ambassador to the Czech Republic, where he's supposedly close with John Roberts. Mm-hmm. On the face of it, this stinks to high heaven. But beyond, because you
didn't
have
even notice this, Charles. 106,000 to the Elias Law Group.
There you go. I mean, this stinks to high heaven. Mm-hmm. And if you were going to go attack this as the IRS, to look at this and say, the first question is, how much partisan political activity has this nonprofit engaged in?
100%.
And what do they say? What do they say? There's a section in the 990 where it says, "Are you engaged in lobbying? Are you engaged in, yes or no?" What do they say? You would then have to do a facts and circumstances investigation where you go in and you say, "All right, look, Norm Eisen, since this thing was created, please account for your time on a daily basis," which you'd have to do, right? If he hasn't done that, then all the estimates in this 990 are bullshit. Right, because most lawyers account for their day on if it's not 15-minute,
10-minute increments,
right, and to do this, you can do this type of structure properly. I wouldn't want the burden of it. You can have a real 170B1A6, which cannot engage in partisan political activity, and cannot create more than an insubstantial amount of private gain through the life of the charity, not just in any period. So what Norm is doing here, the overarching purpose of this is to protect Obama, to make sure that anyone who is following the stench of corruption during the Obama years and the scandal-free presidency, even in the transition period, before the transition period, from June of 2008, when Barack and Hillary smoked a peace pipe, supposedly, in Dianne Feinstein's mansion in Washington, D.C., there has been a nonstop effort to first protect the Clintons from any kind of rigorous inquiry, not into what the Clintons were doing from October 1997 to the present, but to just make sure that nobody goes back over the ground of what was the FBI doing when it pretended to investigate the Clinton Foundation from late January, early February 2001 to the present. That's ground that the rhinos, because Bush was involved with the Clinton Foundation, HW and W, fundraising illegally for a lot of different ventures. So the Republicans don't want, the powerful Republicans, the rhinos do not want that investigated. And then, the origin story of Obama, what was he doing after Columbia? for the 5-year period where nobody seems to know exactly what he did. What was he doing in the Senate in Illinois? How did he become the candidate? How did he win the election? How did he get financed into the presidency? Norm's job is to make sure that people who are interested in those issues don't get a chance to attack them and are discredited. That's what he's doing here. And he's absolutely terrified that Donald Trump, will find whatever he needs to find to, get into these. We now know, we knew about this before, but Grassley is now aware that there are files in the FBI, ostensibly on Crossfire Hurricane. I think they have to do with the Clinton Foundation investigations and Barack Obama's origin story. There are files that James Comey knew about that made sure were not in Sentinel. So that when people who were concerned, people who had been attacked by the Justice Department or the FBI, when they made requests for exculpatory information, which has to be shared, the Brady doctrine has to be shared with the defendant, the FBI could go search Sentinel and say, well, those are our files. We don't see anything here, and hide crucial evidence. This is kind of like reverse Stasi. And of all the things that are out there to beyond the fact that, the revelation from the Secret Service whistleblower that Joe Biden couldn't find his way out of a closet. I mean, think about that. I mean,
Isn't that a revelation? That's like when Clay Aikens held a press conference to announce that he was gay. It's like, really? Is this why we're here?
or Oprah that she's not gay.
It's like, now that you mention it. Hadn't thought about that, but are you sure?
He became
weird press conference.
But think about that. I mean, I've seen some big closets in my day. If you find somebody, we had a pretty big house at one point, and we'd throw birthday parties for our kids, and there'd be like 19, 20 kids roaming around this house. And there was one time where a kid got lost in the house and couldn't figure out how to get to the party.
That happened to me at some fancy person's house when I was a little kid. I was like, but I was a kid, and it was a big house. I wasn't an adult in a closet. I'm sure Joe Biden would get lost in a closet.
It harkens back, to the Podesta WikiLeaks emails where, Hillary's got several emails saying, there's a cabinet meeting. Am I supposed to show up? I mean, if you're a cabinet level person who's one of the smartest lawyers in history,
how do you ask
and you're
that?
seriously sitting there as Secretary of State, am I supposed to be at the cabinet meeting? Obviously you're window dressing, you're play acting. Right? I mean,
but it's also the type of thing that some jackass actor on a movie is like, oh, I'm in that scene, I'm in the trailer, man. Okay, somebody go get that guy. What's going on?
Well, you know what I mean? But at least in a movie, the principal doesn't have the ability to explode a nuclear weapon. I mean, here's a guy, on the one hand, Jake Tapper and all his Confederates in lamestream press are sharp as attack. And Jasmine, idiot Crockett is out there now saying it's Trump. We shouldn't be talking about the 25th Amendment and Biden. I have serious concerns about Trump's cognitive ability. Spell the word cognitive, jackass. You probably can't even do that.
She's terrible. But, absolutely terrible.
But so we had a prolonged period. I would argue by the debate, the first debate, where Kamala Harris, of all people, smoked Biden in that first debate. And won, some say, the first debate. From that period, it should have been obvious to those close to him and to major donors that Joe Biden was on the applesauce and slippers and don't let him anywhere without a leash mode, right? He was not validly a candidate or certainly the president. He had lost his mental faculties before the election of 2020. And a lot of people knew that.
Adjunct mental faculties.
right. And a lot of people knew that. And, we put some focus on Neera Tanden because the reason I jumped on that one is because of her closeness to John Podesta and John Podesta's windfall. I mean, he basically won the lottery under Biden. They gave him $375 billion to hand out in Green New Scam projects. I mean, this to a guy whose brother's basic business is lobbying. So, I mean, here's take what you want out of $375 billion. Neera Tanden replace him as head of the Center for American Progress, and she was very close to Hillary Clinton, and so I jumped all over that. There's another name in the news. He's been in the news before. Is this guy Bernal, Bernal? I forget his first name. Is it Anthony or Bernal or something like that? And he was on Jill Biden's staff, and apparently really poisonous, kind of like Anthony Weiner style personality. Only he likes wieners. This guy Weiner likes women, and so there was a lot of chatter a number of years ago about
Anthony Bernal. It looks like.
Yeah, Anthony Bernal. He's apparently there were numerous instances where he harassed straight men, and people complained about that, and they wouldn't punish him because he was so stuck into Jill Biden. And that guy, I think, deserves a lot of scrutiny, a ton of scrutiny. I mean, the standard for writing about a Republican scandal is if there's an appearance of impropriety, not an impropriety itself, an appearance. So you go after Ginny Thomas for being a Trump supporter as the wife of Clarence Thomas, because that's an appearance of impropriety. But, all these justices laundering donations through their wives or spouses' nonprofits, that's okay. Or John Roberts having a wife whose business is helping corporations and other persons decide what's the best route through the court system, is my understanding of her business, making millions off that. Yeah, it's ridiculous.
That sounds like a lawfare payment.
Again, lawfare should be something that is outlawed, actually.
Yeah.
I mean, in England, you have the system, and I'm not advocating this system, but in England, you have the system that the loser pays in a lawsuit. So, you launch a spurious lawfare
thing. It's a deterrent.
It is, but it ends up being, entrenching power for the rich.
That's true.
System. There has to be some kind of modified approach to that. But this Norm guy, he's too cute by half. I mean, if you were going to do this type of stuff, flirt with the edge of the law, right? You probably wouldn't want to give interviews about it.
Oh,
you probably bold. Yeah, but this guy's on podcast after podcast, with his assuming that the audience is all in, that it's okay. I'm a lawyer, magna cum laude graduate from Harvard Law School. I am going to bend the American legal system because the world is all about me, Norm Eisen. I'm going to demonstrate that I am more powerful, even than the President of the United States. Barack Obama needs me to protect his legacy. I'm doing a service for humanity. Aren't I noble? I mean, the guy's a fucking putz. And somebody, he's a bully.
He's right? A coward.
And he needs to be, there needs to be an Eisen standard defining what you can't do with the law. This needs to be, you need to make an example of this and say, listen, here are the various things that he used illegally to think that he was advancing the cause of protecting Obama and thereby the Clintons. This is what and the Democratic Party. This is what he thinks you can do. You can take something that is not allowed to engage in partisan political activity. You can get your donations through that entity and allow the people, the rich individuals making those donations, to get a bigger share of their income protected in a year. It was the way it used to be able to do this. And then you could take these favored donations and send them into an action organization to engage in in partisan political activity in violation of the law. And as a guess, if you were to go into great detail and compare the 990s and say, all right, let's pick out the biggest expenses in Norm's charity and in the action thing, let's add them up and let's see what the percentage allocation might be. If it's 52%, that'll be fine, maybe. And if it's a different percentage for each of those things, that might be fine. But as a guess, he's just arbitrarily allocating
No,
things. That
no. I think that it's worse than that. We'll get into this, Charles. We've only got a few minutes here before we make our way over to the First Amendment Forum, but we can take a look at some of these filings I've made, these amicus filings, because I did break out some of that information, like, to the dollar amount, and it's quite
good.
alarming for people to see. So people who are sponsoring the show on subscribestar.com or patreon.com/crowdsource the truth, legacy members who already have their subscriptions, everybody who's on Odyssey is getting free access to the sponsored shows, so congratulations there. People can also join us on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. Can't yet accept new sponsors on Odyssey, but that's coming pretty soon. And people who also subscribe to me on X at JG_CSTT. We'll get into all of that.
Good.
Good. But we've still got about 4 or 5 minutes before we
okay.
do that. I mean, basically, Charles, the key to it is, and these are just to call them red flags is like, I don't even know. They share the same address, the C3 and the C4. They have, Norm is the director, and there are other directors in common. They share advertising expenses. It's not just a minor commingling of funds. It's millions of dollars.
And the names are similar.
It's all the red flags.
And that's what we saw with the Clinton Foundation. You create something that sounds like it could be the Clinton Foundation, sounds like it could be related to Norm. I bet you if we were the FBI or whatever may replace the FBI, and we could go and say, all right, forget these 990s. We want to see the source materials. We want to see, if you got a check, we want to see the check.
Yeah.
The donations. We want to see, what the person actually wrote on the check. Was the entity.
Oh, right. You see, I didn't go to that depth yet of looking who donated. So let's just do that for a second. If we put States United Democracy, let's just look at that real quick.
Yeah. And typically if it's a private foundation that made the donation, they have to indicate on their filing, was this a public charity? And they have to, investigate. And this is not, in my mind, a public charity. It's claiming to be one, but it's not.
Now, you taught me how to do this, Charles. We can see
go
here.
Into
Leadership Center
what are you
for
trying?
Attorney. Well, I put in States United Democracy in quotes, and we're searching in the filing text, and there's 54 filings.
Right.
So obviously some of them are the 990s for these entities, but then a lot of them are going to be the donors. Unite and Renew Educational Foundation, Our American Future, Action is
Action donated to the 501c3?
Well, that's not their thing. Their thing is States United Democracy Center and States United Democracy Action. So it seems like that's something that other people use where, just adding action to it is something. But the Bellwether Foundation is giving here, it says $100,000. Judith and
let's look at that.
Crump.
Look at the Bellwether 100,000. Let's just see what they indicate. Let's find it it'll be on the Schedule I maybe, or what is it? Schedule. It's a list of their donations. They have to list it. There's a schedule where any donation, over 5,000, you've got to list them out. And what they do,
other expenses, income schedule, investments, corporate stock schedule. Shouldn't it just take us, if we put States Democracy, it should just search it. So we got to download it and search it like that. Or save it. This is what we're going to get into here on the sponsor show, because this takes a minute to do this properly, and people, I think, really enjoy it when we do this. But here, we've got the thing here. Let's take a look.
And one thing, is the norms, are the entities in Washington, D.C.?
Yeah.
Perfect. Because the U.S. Attorney in Washington, D.C.
Oh, right.
The U.S. Attorney on Washington, D.C. Janine Pirro is just the person who can say to the Washington, D.C., which has its own very punitive income tax department, can say, all right, we want to see all the filings in Washington, D.C. on this entity. I tried to do that for the Clinton Foundation, and I was told, no, those are archived, and you can only try to get into them if you get an appointment and they're not going to give you, I had the Daily Caller try to do it. They couldn't do it.
Wow.
So
here you go, Charles. Here it is. States United Democracy Center. So that's the C3. And they say it's a C3, and it says general support 100,000.
Right. So they're giving money to this thing on the express understanding that it is a C3, and specifically a 170B1A6 nonpartisan. Yeah. So what is this donor? Is this a large entity? You've got the whole thing there.
Yeah, this is private foundation. This is the Bellwether Foundation. Where does it show me that here? 16 million fair market value of all assets.
Yeah, so it's not small. And who are the people associated with it? The Bellwether, nice name.
I don't know.
They're the officers and directors. It'll be right there.
Where is that?
Like 6-7 pages in. After that.
There we go. James Lisa Davis is the president. Paul Oliver Davis is the secretary. So I guess it's the Davises.
Two Davises? Is it husband and husband, or is it brothers? Or
Jamie.
It's only two people.
Lisa.
Wait.
A woman.
Oh, Lisa. It's only two people, or
that seems to be. This just says
three to have
information about officers, trustees, foundation managers, highly paid employees. Just two.
You can't do that. You have to have three to have a nonprofit.
They're defying all odds, Charles.
And
People told them they couldn't do it, but they did it.
They got an opinion from Norm Eisen. Is it
probably?
Is it
Wilmington, Delaware?
Is it Wilmington, Delaware? It's probably connected to the Bidens.
Maybe. Well, listen, we're out of time here for this, but I really like it when we do these types of investigations on the fly. People are going to be able to join us on subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth, patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Thanks for sponsoring on odyssey.com. People can't join us there yet, but you can, if you're not already a sponsor, join us on crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com or by subscribing to me at JG_CS.